My wife mocked my career at holiday dinner. But when her sister secretly asked for my contact, it exposed years of control and manipulation. That holiday dinner was the breaking point. The table was perfectly set, crystal glasses reflecting the warm glow of expensive candles, a spread that had taken hours to prepare, all to impress the family that never truly accepted me. 5 years ago, when I was introduced to the prestigious law firm, I was eager to prove myself worthy of the position. My ambition matched my dedication. I worked late hours and weekends to climb the corporate ladder. The same drive that initially attracted my spouse now seemed to be the source of constant ridicule. "He's still at the same position after 3 years," she announced to everyone at the table, interrupting me as I shared a recent professional accomplishment. Her voice carried that familiar mocking tone that had become increasingly common in our private conversations. While everyone else is being promoted, he's just stagnant. The awkward silence that followed was deafening. I looked around the table. Her parents avoided eye contact, focusing intently on their plates. Her younger brother coughed uncomfortably. Only her sister met my gaze, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and sympathy. "Actually, I'm being considered for the senior advisory position," I said quietly, trying to maintain my dignity. "The partners are making their decision next month." "They've been saying that for a year," my spouse laughed, waving dismissively. "Don't hold your breath. We all know how these things go for you." I fell silent, pushing food around my plate as the conversation shifted to her recent promotion, her third in 4 years at the marketing agency. The contrast she was drawing couldn't have been clearer. While she soared, I apparently floundered. At least, that was the narrative she was determined to present. After dinner, while helping with dishes in the kitchen, I noticed her sister approaching. "Don't take it personally," she whispered, careful not to be overheard. "She does this with everyone. It's how she feels important." Our eyes locked for a moment longer than was comfortable. There was something in her gaze I couldn't quite decipher. Pity, perhaps, or something deeper. Whatever it was, it made me acutely aware of the growing distance between my spouse and me. The drive home was silent. Any attempt at conversation was met with sharp remarks about how I had embarrassed her by contradicting her at dinner. According to her, I should have just accepted her joking comments about my career without defense. Back home, I retreated to the home office while she called friends. Her laughter echoed through our apartment as she recounted the dinner, embellishing my humiliation for her audience. Each laugh felt like another crack in the foundation of our marriage. I opened my laptop and found an email from work. The partners had moved up their decision timeline. The senior advisory position would be decided before Christmas, not after the new year as originally planned. Contrary to my spouse's public assessment, my prospects were actually promising. That night, lying awake while she slept soundly beside me, I realized something had fundamentally changed, not just in how she saw me, but in how I saw myself through her eyes, diminished, inadequate, unworthy. 5 years of subtle degradation had taken its toll, but something about the public nature of tonight's humiliation crystallized everything. Little did I know that the holiday dinner was just the beginning. In the coming days, an unexpected message would arrive that would shatter the fragile remains of what I thought was a supportive marriage, exposing truths neither of us was prepared to face. 3 days after the holiday dinner, my phone buzzed with a notification from a social media platform I rarely used. The message was from my spouse's sister. "I hope this isn't inappropriate, but could I get your professional contact information? I've been following your firm's work and would love to discuss a potential project." I stared at the message for several minutes, uncertain how to respond. My initial reaction was caution. Given the tense family dynamics, any private communication seemed potentially problematic. Yet there was nothing unprofessional about her request. After careful consideration, I sent my business email and office number. "Happy to discuss any professional matters," I wrote, keeping my response deliberately formal. Her reply came within minutes. "Thank you. I've actually been admiring your contributions to the Richardson case last year. Your analytical approach was brilliant." I nearly dropped my phone. The Richardson case had been a significant achievement in my career, a complex corporate litigation that had required innovative legal strategies. I had spent months developing the approach that ultimately won the case, yet my spouse had dismissed it as just doing your job when I shared the victory. "That's very kind," I responded. "Most people don't recognize the nuances of that case." "I do," she wrote back. "Unlike some people, I actually understand the value of methodical work rather than just flashy results." The implication was clear. My heart raced as I realized the subtext of her message. She had been paying attention to my career all along, recognizing achievements that my own spouse belittled. The revelation was both validating and deeply unsettling. Over the next 2 days, we exchanged occasional messages about legal matters. She asked intelligent questions about my approach to cases, showing genuine interest in my professional perspective. Each conversation reinforced a painful contrast. While my spouse publicly mocked my career progress, her sister seemed to truly value my expertise. During those exchanges, she gradually revealed more. "I've always thought you were wasted at that firm," she wrote. "Your talents deserve more recognition." When I mentioned the potential senior advisory position, her enthusiasm was immediate and genuine. "That's incredible, though not surprising. They'd be fools not to promote you." The support was intoxicating. After years of having my professional worth diminished at home, I found myself checking for her messages throughout the day, eager for the validation they provided. On Friday afternoon, she sent a more personal message. "I need to confess something. I've been wanting to reach out for months. That dinner was just the final straw. Seeing how she treated you was unbearable." I sat at my desk, staring at those words as colleagues passed by my office. The weight of her implications settled heavily on my chest. All those years of subtle degradation weren't just in my imagination. Someone else had noticed. Someone else thought it was wrong. That evening, I arrived home to find my spouse going through my phone. The calm facade I had maintained crumbled instantly. "Professional conversations. Really?" she sneered, holding up my phone with the message thread visible. "With my sister, of all people?" "It's about work," I said, reaching for the phone. "She's interested in the firm's services." "Don't insult my intelligence," she snapped. "My sister doesn't need legal services. She's trying to get back at me through you." "Get back at you for what?" I asked, genuinely confused. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. "She's always been jealous of everything I have, and now she's trying to manipulate you." The accusation was so absurd that I almost laughed. Instead, I felt a surprising clarity wash over me. This wasn't about her sister at all. This was about control. Control I had unconsciously surrendered over years of subtle emotional manipulation. "We were discussing the Richardson case," I said quietly. She actually recognized the significance of the work. The flash of anger in her eyes confirmed everything. In that moment, I understood that my accomplishments threatened her in some fundamental way. My success couldn't be permitted unless it was diminished, controlled, and ultimately owned by her narrative. "I'm going for a walk," I said, turning toward the door. "If you leave now, don't bother coming back tonight," she called after me. I paused at the threshold, years of accusations and belittlement crystallizing into perfect clarity. "I think that might be for the best," I replied, and closed the door behind me. I spent that night at a hotel downtown, watching the city lights flicker while contemplating how quickly my marriage had unraveled. By morning, my phone was flooded with messages, not just from my spouse but from her entire family. She had clearly been busy. The narrative she'd crafted was breathtaking in its deception. According to her version, I had been secretly pursuing her sister, using professional pretexts to initiate an inappropriate relationship. The accusations were as false as they were hurtful, but they confirmed what I had long suspected. Truth was malleable in her hands, shaped to whatever form best served her needs. Her parents called first, their disappointment palpable even through the phone. "We welcomed you into our family," her father said sternly. "This is how you repay that trust." I tried explaining the reality, that the communication had been entirely professional and initiated by his younger daughter. But my words seemed to evaporate against the solid wall of their preconceptions. They had already decided which version of events to believe. Around noon, I received a call from her brother. Unlike the others, he seemed hesitant, uncertain. "Look, I know how she can be," he said quietly. "Just tell me straight. Is there anything to these accusations?" "Absolutely nothing," I responded firmly. "Read the messages yourself if you don't believe me. Everything was professional." There was a long pause before he spoke again. "She's always been like this, you know, twisting situations to make herself the victim, even when we were kids." His words felt like confirmation of something I had long suspected, but never fully acknowledged. This wasn't just about me. This was a pattern that predated our relationship. By mid-afternoon, I decided to return home and face the situation directly. The apartment was eerily quiet when I entered, but I quickly discovered why. My spouse was on the phone in the bedroom, door slightly ajar. I could hear her sobbing dramatically. "I just don't understand how he could do this to me," she was saying. "With my own sister, after everything I've done for his career." I pushed the door open without knocking. Her tears dried instantly, replaced by cold anger as she saw me standing there. "I'll call you back," she said into the phone, her voice suddenly composed. "Everything you've done for my career?" I repeated, unable to contain my disbelief. "You've consistently undermined me at every opportunity. You've belittled my achievements. You've turned professional setbacks into evidence of my personal failings." "That's not true," she countered immediately. "I've always been your biggest supporter. I just don't coddle you like my sister apparently does." The conversation quickly devolved from there. Accusations flew like poison darts. Years of unspoken resentments finally found voice. In the midst of our argument, her phone rang. It was her sister. "Don't you dare answer that," I warned. But she snatched up the phone with a triumphant glare. "How could you?" she demanded without preamble. "Your own sister's husband. Have you no shame?" I could hear the confused response through the speaker. "What are you talking about? This is completely unprofessional." "Unprofessional? Is that what you call pursuing your sister's husband?" "I reached out for legitimate business reasons," her sister responded, her voice growing stronger. "If you've twisted that into something inappropriate, that's your issue, not mine." My spouse put the phone on speaker, perhaps hoping to catch her sister in some admission of guilt. Instead, what followed was a revelation that silenced us both. "The truth is," her sister continued, her voice shaking slightly, "I've watched for years as you've manipulated and belittled someone who deserves much better. I reached out professionally because I genuinely respect his work, something you've never done. You've always been jealous of me," my spouse shot back, "of everything I have." There was a hollow laugh from the other end of the line. "Jealous? Let me tell you something I've never admitted to anyone. Before you ever met him, I had feelings for him. I met him first at that law firm event, remember? But I never had the courage to say anything. 2 weeks later, you swooped in and claimed him like another trophy." The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at my spouse, watching the kaleidoscope of emotions cross her face. Shock, rage, calculation. "Is that true?" I finally asked, breaking the silence. "You knew your sister was interested in me?" "That's ancient history," she dismissed, "but the avoidance confirmed everything. And completely irrelevant to you two sneaking around behind my back." Her sister's voice cut through the tension. "There was no sneaking around. I reached out professionally, but I won't deny that seeing how she treats you at that dinner made me finally speak up. No one deserves to be diminished like that, especially not by someone who claims to love them." My spouse ended the call abruptly, throwing the phone onto the bed. For a long moment we stood in silence, the weight of these revelations pressing down between us. "She's manipulating you," she finally said. "Can't you see that? She's always wanted what I have." I looked at the woman I had married, really looked at her, and realized with startling clarity that I no longer recognized her. Or perhaps more accurately, I was finally seeing her clearly for the first time. "I think I need to stay somewhere else for a while," I said quietly. "We both need space to think about what we want. If you walk out that door again," she warned, "don't expect to be welcomed back." I nodded slowly, accepting the ultimatum for what it was, not a loving partner fighting for our marriage, but a final attempt at control. "I understand," I said, and began packing a bag. I found temporary refuge in a downtown extended-stay hotel, close enough to work, but far from the emotional battlefield our home had become. 3 days passed in a strange limbo, with work providing a welcome distraction from the chaos of my personal life. The partners had narrowed their decision for the senior advisory position to 2 candidates, myself and a colleague from the corporate division. Despite everything happening, I threw myself into the final presentations with singular focus. On Wednesday evening, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. It was her sister. "I need to explain myself," she said without preamble. "This has gone too far, and it's not what I intended." I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, uncertain whether this conversation was wise. "I think enough damage has been done," I replied cautiously. "Please just hear me out. I'm at the coffee shop around the corner from your office. 20 minutes, that's all I'm asking." Against my better judgment, I agreed. The rational part of me knew this meeting would only complicate an already volatile situation, but I needed answers that only she could provide. The coffee shop was quiet for an evening, just a few patrons scattered among the tables. She sat in the far corner, 2 cups already on the table. When our eyes met, I saw anxiety written across her features. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I admitted, leaving the coffee untouched. "So talk." She took a deep breath. "First, I want to be clear. I reached out for professional reasons. Your work on the Richardson case genuinely impressed me. And my company is looking for legal consultation on some intellectual property matters." I nodded slowly, but there was more to it than that. "Yes," she admitted, her eyes dropping to her cup. "Watching how she treated you at that dinner brought back all these feelings I've suppressed for years. Not romantic feelings, though. Yes, those were there once. But anger at how she diminishes everyone around her to feel superior. You said you had feelings for me before we met," I prompted, needing to understand this piece of the puzzle. She looked uncomfortable but continued. 5 years ago at the firm's charity gala. I was there representing my company. We talked for nearly an hour about international copyright law. It was the most engaging conversation I'd had in months. The memory suddenly clicked into place. A conversation by the bar, an intelligent woman in a blue dress asking insightful questions about a case I was working on. I had been impressed by her knowledge, and had even considered asking for her number. 2 weeks later, she continued. She mentioned meeting this brilliant lawyer at a networking event. I was shocked when she described you. She had attended the same gala but in a different capacity. She never mentioned meeting you there, I said slowly. Of course not. She saw us talking that night. She always had an uncanny ability to identify what others value and claim it for herself. She paused, looking directly at me. You were just another acquisition. The revelation settled heavily between us. It explained so much about the early days of our relationship, how my spouse had seemed so interested in my work, only for that interest to transform into criticism once the acquisition was secured. Why tell me this now? I asked. What's the point? Because the family is in chaos, and you deserve to know the truth. She's told everyone that we've been having an affair. Her parents believe her completely. Her brother is skeptical but unwilling to publicly contradict her. And now she's demanding everyone choose sides. I ran my hands through my hair, frustration mounting. This is absurd. We had a few professional conversations. I showed them the messages. She said all of them were completely transparent. It didn't matter. She's constructed this narrative where I've always been jealous of her, and this is my ultimate betrayal. And have you been jealous of her? The question hung in the air between us. Her expression softened. Not in the way she thinks. I've envied her confidence, her ability to move through life taking whatever she wants without consequence. But jealous of her possessions, her status, her husband? No. She hesitated. What I felt watching her relationship with you isn't jealousy. It's regret. Regret that I didn't speak up sooner, that I watched for 5 years as she slowly crushed your spirit and said nothing because of family politics. She leaned forward. The man I met that night at the gala was passionate about his work, confident in his abilities. The man at that holiday dinner looked defeated. Her words struck with uncomfortable precision. I'd been different once, before the constant criticism, before the public humiliation, before my accomplishments became threats to be neutralized. I'm not suggesting anything inappropriate, she clarified quickly. I'm not trying to step into her place, but you need to know that her version of you, underperforming, disappointing, stagnant, that's her creation, not your reality. As we spoke, my phone buzzed repeatedly with incoming messages. Finally, I checked the screen and felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. My spouse had somehow discovered our meeting and had sent a barrage of accusatory texts, each more vitriolic than the last. The final message chilled me. I'm filing for divorce. You've made your choice. I showed the phone to her sister, who closed her eyes briefly. I'm so sorry, she whispered. This isn't what I wanted. It's not your fault, I replied, surprised to find I meant it. This marriage has been dying for a long time. This situation just exposed what was already broken. As we left the coffee shop, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. The partnership I thought I had wasn't a partnership at all. It was a carefully constructed power dynamic where my role was to remain permanently grateful, permanently insufficient, permanently in need of guidance and correction. What will you do now? She asked as we stood on the sidewalk. I looked up at the night sky, barely visible through the city lights. Start over, I suppose. Find out who I am without someone constantly telling me I'm not enough. Her expression was sympathetic but carried something else, a question unasked. "And no," I added gently, "not with you. That would just be trading one toxic situation for another." She nodded, understanding. "For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice." As I watched her walk away, my phone buzzed with a new message, not from my spouse, but from the law firm's managing partner. The decision had been made early. The senior advisory position was mine. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of having my professional abilities questioned at home, this validation came precisely when my personal life was imploding. Perhaps that was fitting. Perhaps I needed to lose the relationship that diminished me to finally recognize my own worth. The weeks following were a blur of legal meetings and hurried arrangements. True to her word, my spouse filed for divorce just 2 days after discovering my coffee shop meeting with her sister. The filing cited irreconcilable differences officially, but the narrative she spread among friends and family was far more dramatic. A tale of betrayal with her innocent sister as the villainous temptress. I hired a divorce attorney from a competing firm, someone with no connections to my professional circle. "This could get messy," she warned during our first consultation, "especially with these accusations flying around. We need to be strategic." Initially, I wanted to fight the false narrative to clear both my name and her sister's. But my attorney advised caution. "The more you protest, the more it seems like you're hiding something. Let's focus on the legal separation and property division. The truth will emerge eventually." I reluctantly agreed, though the injustice burned. My spouse demanded possession of our apartment despite my name being on the lease. She wanted alimony despite earning more than me for the past 3 years. Each demand seemed designed not for financial security, but to inflict maximum punishment. "She's overplaying her hand," my attorney observed after a particularly contentious negotiation session. "The judge will see through this." Meanwhile, at work, I threw myself into the new senior advisory position. The promotion came with increased responsibilities that provided welcome distraction from my personal chaos. My colleagues noticed the change in me, not just the new title but a gradual transformation in my demeanor. Without the constant voice undermining my confidence, I found myself speaking up more in meetings, proposing bolder strategies, taking risks I would have previously avoided. 3 weeks into the separation, her sister called again. "Can we meet? Just to clear the air." Against my attorney's explicit advice, I agreed. This time we met in a public park, neutral territory with plenty of witnesses, a sad necessity given the accusations swirling around us. She looked tired. The family conflict was clearly taking its toll. "She's turned everyone against me," she said without preamble. "My parents won't speak to me. Friends we've had for years are choosing sides." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "None of this is your fault." "Isn't it, though?" She stared at the distant tree line. "If I hadn't reached out to you, then nothing would have changed." I finished for her. The marriage would have continued its slow decay. I would have kept diminishing myself to maintain peace. This was inevitable. You just accelerated the timeline. We walked in silence for a while, the autumn leaves crunching beneath our feet. Finally, she asked the question I sensed had been on her mind. "What about after, when this is all settled?" I stopped walking and turned to face her directly. "You mean us?" She nodded, her expression carefully neutral. "I know the timing is terrible, and with everything being so complicated, but I've always wondered what might have happened if I'd spoken up that night at the gala. The proposition hung between us, a potential future, a path not taken. For a moment I allowed myself to consider it. She was intelligent, accomplished, seemingly supportive. In another context, another timeline perhaps. "I can't," I said finally. "And it's not because of your sister or the family drama. It's because I need to find out who I am without any of this defining me. For 5 years I've existed as an extension of someone else's narrative. I need to write my own story now." Disappointment flickered across her face, quickly masked. "I understand. But if someday—" "I can't make promises," I interrupted gently. "And neither should you. We're both reacting to an extreme situation. What feels like attraction might just be mutual sympathy." She smiled sadly. "Or it might be what was supposed to happen 5 years ago. Either way," I said firmly, "now isn't the time to find out." As we parted ways, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. The path of revenge, of proving my worth by choosing her sister over her, held a certain poetic justice that was tempting in my darkest moments. But it would have been another form of allowing my spouse to define my choices, my identity. That evening, I received a settlement offer from my spouse's attorney, surprisingly reasonable compared to her previous demands. She would keep the apartment, I would keep my retirement accounts, and no alimony would be sought. The only unusual clause was a non-disclosure agreement regarding the circumstances of our separation. She's trying to control the narrative, my attorney explained. With this NDA, she can tell whatever story she wants about why you split, and if you refuse, then we go to court where everything becomes public record. I thought about it overnight, weighing the options. Fighting would be satisfying but would prolong the pain, keeping me tethered to a relationship that had already taken too much from me. Accepting meant giving her one final victory, control of the story, but also freedom from the conflict. In the morning, I instructed my attorney to accept, with one modification: the NDA would be mutual. Neither of us could publicly discuss the circumstances of our separation. Smart move, my attorney approved. This gives you both a clean break. 2 days later, I received the countersigned agreement. Just like that, 5 years of marriage were legally dismantled. The swiftness was both disorienting and liberating. That weekend, I moved my remaining possessions from the apartment into a new condo I'd purchased closer to the office. As I carried the last box out, I passed my spouse in the hallway. For a moment, we stood facing each other, strangers now, despite the years shared. "I hope it was worth it," she said coldly. I considered various responses: angry retorts, bitter accusations, even conciliatory platitudes. Instead, I simply said, "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for." Her expression flickered with something I couldn't identify. Perhaps surprise at not getting the reaction she expected, or perhaps a momentary recognition of the person I was becoming without her influence. Without waiting for her response, I walked past her to the elevator, my steps lighter than they had been in years. 6 months have passed since the finalization of my divorce. Winter gave way to spring, and with it came a sense of renewal that extended beyond the changing seasons. The firm has flourished under new leadership strategies I've implemented, resulting in a 15% increase in our client base. My professional confidence, once systematically undermined, now feels unshakable. I've had limited contact with my former spouse. Occasionally I hear updates through mutual acquaintances. She received another promotion, moved to a larger apartment, started dating someone new. Each piece of news affects me less than the last, the emotional tether weakening with time and distance. Her family, once a significant presence in my life, has largely retreated into the background. Her parents never reached out after the divorce was finalized. I suspect they continued to believe the narrative she crafted, and I've made peace with that reality. The truth requires no audience to remain true. Her brother sent a single text after everything settled. "Hope you're doing well. Sorry about how everything played out." I appreciated the gesture but didn't pursue further conversation. Some bridges, once burned, are better left as ruins than rebuilt on unstable foundations. As for her sister, the unwitting catalyst for the implosion of my marriage, we maintained sporadic professional contact. The intellectual property consultation her company needed was handled by a colleague at my recommendation, avoiding any appearance of impropriety. Our personal interactions gradually became less charged, the potential for something more giving way to a careful, distant respect. Last week, she called with news. "I'm moving to Chicago," she announced. "Got an offer I couldn't refuse." "Congratulations," I said, genuinely pleased for her. "When do you leave?" "Next month." I was wondering if we could have dinner before I go, for closure, I suppose. I agreed to dinner, choosing a restaurant we had never visited together, free from associations or memories. When we met, the conversation flowed more easily than I expected, focusing primarily on her new opportunity and the changes in my professional life. "You seem different," she observed over dessert. "More present." I considered her assessment. I am different. For years, I existed in a state of constant apology for my ambitions, my setbacks, my successes. Everything I did required justification or diminishment. Now I just am. She smiled. "It suits you." Near the end of the evening, she broached the subject we had both been avoiding. "Have you heard from her recently?" "Not directly," I replied. "I understand she's doing well." She nodded slowly. "She is, at least professionally, personally." She trailed off, seemingly uncertain whether to continue. "You can tell me," I assured her. "Whatever it is, it no longer has the power to wound." "She's struggling with your absence," she admitted. Not that she would ever acknowledge it openly, but according to our brother, she checks your social media constantly, asks subtle questions about you. Seems almost surprised that your life continued, improved even, without her. The information settled between us, neither satisfying nor disturbing. That's natural, I suppose. We were together for 5 years. Do you ever think about what might have happened if... She left the question unfinished, but its meaning hung clearly in the air. If you had spoken up at the gala. If I had recognized the pattern of behavior sooner. If we had met under different circumstances. I shook my head slowly. Those questions lead nowhere useful. We can't rewrite the past. In the future? She asked, her tone deliberately casual. I met her gaze directly. I'm not the same person who attended that holiday dinner 6 months ago. That man was defined by his marriage, by constant comparisons and criticisms. The person I'm becoming now needs to exist independently, to establish an identity not shaped in reaction to someone else. She nodded, understanding. And what about when that process is complete? When you fully know who you are without her influence? Then I'll make choices based on that knowledge, not out of vengeance or rebellion or the need to prove something. I smiled gently. But that's a conversation for another time, perhaps in another city. Chicago isn't that far, she offered with a small smile. No, I agreed, it isn't. As we parted ways outside the restaurant, she embraced me briefly. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For not choosing me as a weapon against her. I think I needed that validation more than I realized. Her words struck me with unexpected force. In refusing to pursue a relationship with her, even when the opportunity presented itself, even when the symmetry of it would have offered a particular kind of justice, I had affirmed her value as more than a pawn in a marital chess game. We had both escaped the toxic dynamic that had threatened to consume us. Walking home through the evening air, I reflected on the strange journey of the past 6 months. What began with public humiliation at a holiday dinner had transformed into an unexpected path to self-discovery. The promotion I received, the very achievement my former spouse had dismissed as impossible, now seemed almost incidental compared to the more significant victory, reclaiming my sense of self-worth. My phone buzzed with a message from the office. A case I'd been working on had reached a favorable settlement, another professional win to add to a growing list. I smiled, knowing that tonight there would be no one at home to diminish the achievement, to reframe it as luck rather than skill, to subtly undermine my moment of pride. Instead, I would celebrate quietly on my own terms, without explanation or justification. The silence of my apartment, once a reminder of what I had lost, now represented something more valuable, the space to discover who I truly am and what I might yet become. The holiday dinner that started this journey seems distant now, like a scene from someone else's life. In a way, I suppose it was. That night revealed the truth about my marriage. But more importantly, it began the process of revealing the truth about myself. A process that continues to unfold with each passing day, free from the shadow of diminishment that had become so familiar I had stopped noticing its presence until it was finally gone. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.